Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing the Goldfinch. This was directed by Crowley and is based upon the Donna Tartt novel of the same name, and it stars Oakes Fegley, Ansel Elgort, Nicole Kidman, Jeffrey Wright and a variety of others. The film really focuses on 13-year-old Theodore Decker, played by Oakes Fegley, whose mother is killed in a bombing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. As a result, Theo is placed with Barbers, a family of his estranged friend Andy, as he has no other relatives in the city and his father has abandoned him. It really looks at how his life is starting to take shape, and then ultimately the reappearance of his father, who abandoned him many years ago, takes him away from the world he's known and thrusts him into a town in the middle of nowhere. And he feels lost and doesn't know where to go or what to do. And then it sort of focuses on him as an adult and the repercussions of the experience he had of the bombing and the loss of his mother, and how that starts to shape his experiences in life, just struggling to make sense of the world. And that's what the film really focuses in on. This was a film I didn't really know what was going to be like. I didn't really have any frame of reference going in. I didn't have any expectations for it. I've never read the book, and I saw a trailer for it quite a while ago. There was something about it that was drawing me to it. It was telling me to see it. I think this is a very interesting film. It's not perfect. It has issues. And look, I think the writer's done a pretty good job, condensing an 800-page book into a 2.5-hour film. But we still don't get a real sense of Theodore that much. There's a lot more missing in it. We only see him, bits and pieces of him as a kid and as an adult, but they never really went into a lot of depth about his character in many ways. We learn little bits and pieces of him, but not enough to flesh out a particular character. I did read a review where they were talking about it would have worked better as a mini-series, and it probably would have, to have developed the character a lot more so we could connect with who he is. There's stuff in this movie I really liked, and stuff they explored which I wish they'd explore a lot more. Overall, the first hour or so I quite enjoyed. I thought it was a good setup to the character. We got to learn a bit of backstory about who Theo was and his relationship with his mother and the experiences he had until he leads up until adult. And they introduce a lot of ideas and things here, and things that would reappear later in the film. But I just felt it really fizzled out in the end. It didn't really... They sort of were building all these things, and it didn't sort of build into an extraordinary thing, which I thought it was going to. It just sort of built to a particular moment, and that was sort of it. I did kind of like the idea that they sort of didn't show you the whole bombing at the start. It was sort of littered throughout the film and came up at certain points. And I really liked that, because you got only a little small sense of things, and then it was revealed later in the film what actually transpired. But we still didn't go into enough depth really, and they didn't really focus too much on why the bombing happened or what happened for it. And I felt like for this sort of story they could have focused on a little bit more of it and shown that Theo was sort of become obsessed with who did it, and he goes on this journey to find out. But the film really doesn't do that, and it isn't really focused on that, which I thought that would have been a bit more interesting element. This film is gorgeous to look at. Roger Deakins once again serves the cinematography, and he does a brilliant job. Everything he shoots just looks fantastic and well put together. And he makes the most ordinary things look extraordinary and interesting to watch. It sort of makes the scenes that are simple and normal sort of a bit larger than life in many ways, and it's just gorgeous to look at. I think Crowley did a solid job as director. He did the best he could with the material that he had. I thought all the acting was solid. I thought that Oakes Fegley, who'd come from Peach Dragon, I think he did a solid job as a young Theo. You really believed him, you really felt for him. He was an interesting sort of character, and you went on the journey with him, and I liked that. I like Ansel Elgort as well. I thought he was really solid as the adult version, I guess, of Theo. And I thought they cast pretty well with these two actors, from the young to the old. I thought that worked really well. There's sort of small roles too, like Luke Wilson ultimately plays Theo's father, and I thought this was a little bit of a miscast. They could have got someone else to play this character. Because Luke Wilson's done so much comedy, it's really hard to see him in a dramatic role. Sarah Paulson's in it, and she's really great as Xandra. I think she's really fun and entertaining in the scenes she's in. She's not in a lot of film, but the moments that she does have are really good. But I think the real standout here is Jeffrey Wright. He's a brilliant, solid actor. It's good to see him doing sort of more dramatic pieces now, rather than, he's more known for Westworld and The Hunger Games and a variety of other roles like that. But at the essence, he's such a brilliant and solid dramatic actor. And I think he's so fantastic in this film. He plays a character called Hobie, who ultimately owned this furniture antique business. But he sort of takes in Theo, takes him under the wing, because Theo appears there. And this forms a bond between Theo and Hobie. And ultimately, there's a character named Pippa in it who was actually at the museum as well. And she was related to Weltley, who was her uncle, who sort of passed away. And she sort of survives, and it looks at how a bond is formed between Theo and Pippa. The scenes with those two are really great, but it's really the scenes with Jeffrey Wright and the Oakes Fegley's Theodore that I really liked. He shows him the ropes of what it is to own a furniture antique business and what to look out for, what's real and what's not, and how to refurbish things. And I really liked these elements, and all these scenes with these two characters in it I really loved. But there weren't enough of them for me. They didn't have enough happening between these two characters. This film felt like some movies that I see where they sort of focus on the things that I don't find that interesting. They're okay, but doesn't really draw me in. And then the other stuff that I'm really interested in, they only show small bits of it, or they don't really go into a lot of depth with it. And I felt this film suffered from that. It's sort of a weird structured film. It starts with him as an adult now, and he begins to tell his story, and that stuff's kind of interesting, and he talks about things that happened, but you don't really know what transpired until later in the film. And then it sort of cuts to him as a kid, and I kind of like that. We get to see the effects of what transpired and how that's affected him, and I kind of like that sort of thing, especially when he gets taken in by the barbers and ultimately taken in by his father later in the film. Get a real sense of isolation from him and the struggle and guilt and everything that he feels with what has transpired, and he's even haunted by nightmares. And then it's sort of, the rest of the film skips back and forth. I think they spent too much time on him as a kid, or more that they showed scenes that weren't that interesting, I didn't think. I was more interested in Ansel, and when we got to see him as the adult Theo, that stuff I was more interested in. And I felt if they spent a bit more time on that, I might have been a bit more enthralled than I actually was. The things I didn't quite like about this film is the length. You really start to feel the length of the film. It is 2.5 hours, and it sort of slowly starts to feel like that. Like I said, this focusing on particular scenes that were okay, but the other scenes I was more interested in didn't focus on enough. I felt some of the characters didn't serve a lot of a purpose. And like I said earlier, they all were building to something that didn't quite get there, just fizzled out in the end. And I felt that they could have went in a different direction with a lot of it and made it a bit more interesting. It's far from a terrible film. I've seen much worse films, and it's probably one of the better films this year. I know that isn't saying a lot because there hasn't been a huge amount of films coming out this year I really enjoyed. But as a film, look, it's kind of solid and interesting. I did enjoy aspects of it, I just didn't love all of it. Probably one of the better dramas I've seen in a long time, and there was stuff that captivated me, and I did enjoy certain aspects of it. Final thoughts. Look, I felt like the painting that he takes from the museum, the Goldfinch, I think to me that really represented his mother and what happened to him. And it kind of reminded him of his mother, and it kind of made him feel that the painting was him hanging on to his mother in a lot of ways and trying to keep her with him and trying to keep her memory alive. And as the film goes on, the painting slowly loses its appeal and ultimately has to let it go in the end. And I felt like that was him letting go of his mother. But knowing that this painting represents so much of her that she's still out in the world and he can still experience that. I thought this was a great sort of metaphor in the film, and the painting represented that, and I really liked that. The film, it looks at guilt, it looks at what can transpire and how we can hang on to things and how we can struggle to move forward, especially if the death of a loved one that sort of comes out of the blue. And as a child, how you sort of deal with that and experience that. Theo is such an interesting character, and there is a lot there. I just wish they went into a bit more depth about who he was, and we focused on pivotal things that shaped his life. Not scenes that would lead to something else later, but the scenes that sort of affected his life. I would have liked to see more of that. I'm going to give The Goldfinch 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was okay, it had good moments in it, it wasn't perfect or brilliant, it looked beautiful, and there was certain things I didn't enjoy about it, especially Jeffrey Wright's performance. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe at the bottom. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.